I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper, and I refer to my interests on the register, including the fact I am an honorary associate of the British Veterinary Association.
My Lords, we take dog attacks very seriously and are making sure the full force of the law is applied. This ranges from lower-level interventions to more serious offences under the Dangerous Dogs Act. The Government has commissioned urgent advice on what steps it can take on dangerous dogs. As a critical first step, the Government is immediately convening the police experts and other stakeholders to define the breed for the purposes of the Dangerous Dogs Act.
Thank my noble friend for that answer, but it is clear that the Dangerous Dogs Act 1991 is not working as it was intended. Dog attacks are on the increase, the public are feeling threatened, and the Act is putting huge pressure on veterinary professionals and animal welfare charities. Can I urge my noble friend to use his good offices to take this opportunity to have a complete overhaul of the Act and to focus not on the breed but the deed, and to look increasingly at antisocial behaviour and aggressive behaviour on the part of dog owners, which should not be tolerated?
Every single one of these attacks is a tragedy, and so often they happen in the home, and some of the people involved really should not be in a position of being in charge of a dog. But I would say this, that from the available data we have, the particular breed that people are concerned about now, XL bullies, we are very concerned because they are disproportionately involved in the serious dog attacks. And there is a divergence of opinion. What my noble friend says about organisations that campaign on this, who are unhappy about the breed-specific nature of it, have one view. Another view is that none of the fatal attacks that have taken place in recent years were carried out by a prohibited breed that was registered under the Act. And we want to get this right. That's why we are talking to everyone, including the police, vets and campaign groups, and we want to make sure that we're keeping people safe.
My Lords, in the United States, the National Rifle Association argue, spuriously in my view, that it isn't the person, it isn't the firearm that's the problem, it's the person carrying it. In this country, we control firearms, dangerous firearms, and we have very few mass shootings opposite to what we see in the United States. Does the Noble Lord agree with me that a dangerous dog that is bred to fight and is inherently dangerous is rightfully being looked at as being banned?
I entirely understand the Noble Lord's point. Most of us who keep dogs will be able to know precisely what that breed of dog is because there's a breed registration book, and it is perfectly easy to describe it. Under some of these so-called fighting dogs, or status dogs as some people call them, there is no evidence of how you actually define that. And I'm not making some bureaucratic excuse for not taking action, because we are taking action. But in order to make the law effective, we have to, if we're going to ban a breed, we have to really ban it and not allow people to get round it by having some nuance of that breed.
My Lords, I was Chief Constable in Merseyside at the time we had a 5-year-old child in St Helens who was awfully murdered by one of these awful breeds. There are difficulties in defining the breed, as the Minister has said. I think a Labrador on some occasions can be regarded as one of these breeds, so it's really not straightforward. One of the things I instigated at the time with the agreement of CPS was an amnesty for owners of the illegal breeds, because the main thing is to get these dogs off the street, not to leave them in a position. Of course, it's hard for the owners to voluntarily hand them over, because they're declaring that it's an illegal animal. It's hard for neighbours to declare it too. I just wonder, at a time where the government is considering what to do next, whether they might consider a national amnesty for the present illegal breeds to get the dogs off the street, rather than worry about, as you've explained, the consequences.
I think the Noble Lord makes a very good point. And under the Dangerous Dogs Act, there is an exemption procedure whereby the person can keep the dog provided they stick to various conditions, that it is taken out on a lead, that it wears a muzzle. But of course that doesn't solve the problem entirely, and what we want to do is to see these dogs removed And there are ways of doing that, and very serious penalties, including up to 14 years in prison for people who break those rules. We are talking to the National Association of Police Chiefs and making sure that we are doing everything in the realm of the possible, but our priority is to get dangerous dogs off the street.
Don't we need to introduce a dog?
My Lords, I am delighted that my noble friend is taking such urgent action on this. Could I suggest to him that he should be more radical when looking at the Dangerous Dogs Act, and that it is time that was sent to the knackers yard and a new system instituted altogether? I say this with some regret, because in the other place, I was the one who introduced it in the first place.
I know that the Act is sometimes held up as a sort of poster boy for the malign effect of knee-jerk legislative reaction to a terrible incident. But as I say, the Pit Bull Terrier, the Japanese Tosa, the Dogo Argentino and the Fila Brasileiro, which are the 4 species that are banned under the Act, haven't been one of the breeds that have taken place in one of these awful attacks. And so you could argue that there may have been more attacks if they hadn't been banned. But we are looking to make this effective, and we want urgent action.
The mantra, no bad dogs, only bad owners, is patchy, as breeds vary considerably. Spaniels, excellent at identifying victims in earthquakes. Border Collies, working with sheep. Labradors, brilliant assistance dogs. Alsatians and Rottweilers, guard dogs. For all, it is part of their inherent nature. The DDA should be reviewed, bearing this in mind. Will the Minister give assurances that if such a review takes place, it will take account of more evidence than just a single video clip?
I can absolutely give that assurance. This has to be one where we in government are lay people. There are real experts that understand animal behaviour, and there are lawyers who can advise us on what really will stand up in court. And if we are to review this Act, we must make sure that we are not losing any benefits that we have had from it, and that we certainly keep this House informed of every stage of such a process.
My Lord, in view of the great increase in pet dogs in recent years, particularly during the pandemic, should we not reconsider reintroducing dog licenses?
I love agreeing with my noble friend, but I can't on this case. It was a very bureaucratic document that cost more than it amounted, no more than a tax on dog owners, and it wouldn't be an effective way of dealing with this particular problem, because by and large the people who keep dogs that have been the predominant species that have been involved in these attacks wouldn't have bothered getting a licence anyway.
My Lords, we know the American bully is easily recognisable, but concerns have been raised that actually it would be quite hard to define within the framework of the Dangerous Dogs Act as it exists at the moment. We know the breed's not recognised by the Kennel Club, for example. The Minister and other noble lords have talked about the importance of replacing, updating the legislation. It isn't working where you have crossbreeds at all. The Minister's talked about the fact that many of the attacks are not done by dogs that are covered by the legislation. So I really do urge the Minister to commit to updating this legislation, because I can't see how we're going to move forward without it.
I'm very happy to have a discussion with the Noble Baroness and any others about what they precisely mean by updating this legislation. That many campaign groups, such as the Dogs Trust, want us to get rid of all breed-specific nature as part of any reform. I'm concerned about that, because I believe that might remove some of the elements that are working, but we are very open to those discussions.
2 weeks ago, on the Today programme, they interviewed a very leading professor, I think it was Chicago University, who specialises in behaviour of dangerous animals who are in contact with human beings. And she was saying, asked in the review, she said they are breeding these specific dogs in America, changing their genes to really increase the fact that they will fight. She asked her opinion, what would you do? Ban it totally.
Well, I totally understand the point my noble friend makes, and that may well be what comes out of this urgent review, and it is of concern right to the top of the government. And he's absolutely right that these species are bred for a purpose that we don't want to see in this country, we don't want to see in our homes, certainly don't want to see on our streets. And the 16 tragedies that have happened since 2022, 16 fatalities, 9 of them involved some form of crossbreed bully dog, and I think the clue is in the name.